Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 24 Transportation Commission meeting. We are starting with any items that are not on the agenda. Does anyone have anything they need to share publicly that's not on the agenda? Hearing none, I would turn it over to Vice Chair Justin Berman to kick off the meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Hearing no public comment to open the meeting, we are going to start things off tonight with the Arlington's Transportation Future update. So, over to Lisa.
Thank you. I'm going to pre-apologize. My allergies have been very bad. So if you hear me cough or my voice oscillates a little, it is the wonderful weather that drew me outside and then also over the last few days. I want to thank you all for being here. We are very excited to be here today to share the proposed vision and goals for Arlington's transportation future. We're going to share a little bit about how we got where we are today, and then what our next steps are. I'm Kristen Culkins. I am the project manager for Arlington's Transportation Future. I work in CPHD in the long range transport, not CPHD, oh my gosh, TPCP acronyms, TPCPM as a principal long range transportation planner. And I'm joined today with Allison and Brian here, who I'm going to let introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Bullock. I'm the manager of the transportation planning team within DES.
And my name is Brian Shelton. I'm the active transportation planner in DES and then deputy project manager.
And then we have Erin Potter online with us. She's
Hi, y'all. I'm Erin. I'm the public engagement specialist with transportation.
We have been working closely together over the last April, 8 months, 10 months, 10 months on Arlington's transportation future. And today what we're really sharing is kind of the culmination of the work that we've been doing since July when we got our NGP and started with our consultants. We started public facing in the fall when we launched our phase 1 engagement, which really kind of was the foundation of our outreach to the community, where we asked people what they wanted out of transportation, what they wanted to see in the future, what they would like to see changed, how they travel, what their preferences are, and what their values are in transportation. During that phase, we also established an advisory group that we created to help guide this process. And we looked at a lot of the existing precedents that the county has as far as planning documents go. We talked to our staff, not just within DES transportation or DES, but a lot of different departments within the county to see kind of what they are expecting out of this process. And we got a lot of great feedback. When we took that, we digested it. It was the foundation of our proposed vision and goals. We took those out to the community in the winter of 2025, shared those, got a lot of great feedback, went to our advisory group, talked to our staff again, not just within DES, but within the county, and used that to kind of create what we brought to you today. I'm going to back up a little bit and kind of explain how we got here in a little bit more detail. I know that you guys have been kept in the loop by your two commissioners that are on the advisory group, specifically Justin, who's here with us today. We have appreciated the feedback that we've been hearing through our advisory group representatives from the committees and commissions, especially Transportation Commission, as you know, kind of the closest, nearest, and dearest to the transportation plan of all of our commissions. So thank you. But community feedback wasn't the only thing we looked at. We started and we kind of said, well, what do we have as a county already? What do we know our commitments are? What's the county's overall vision? So we looked at the county's vision, which is Arlington will be a diverse and inclusive world-class urban community with secure, attractive residential and commercial neighborhoods where people unite to form a caring, learning, participating, sustainable community in which each person is important. So that's the county's vision. How does that relate to transportation? What do we want to think about as we continue to build the vision and the goals for transportation? We also reviewed a lot of kind of sister plans to the transportation plan, the comprehensive plan, its many elements, a number of our internal transportation documents like our Vision Zero commitments, our area plans to see kind of what exists within the county as far as its commitments, not just in transportation and priorities, but what are we as a county striving for, and equity, environmental sustainability, travel choice, integrated land uses, that commitment to Vision Zero, affordability, and economic opportunities were really themes that emerged from a number of those plans. You can see again kind of how we thought about this. We confirmed a lot of values through that process, making sure that we weren't just pulling from one document and saying, yes, this cost confirms what we're looking at, but really building on all of the work that our partner agencies and departments and other plans that we as DES, DOT have done in transportation to identify opportunities for this transportation plan in the refresh. A couple of policies that we saw within the transportation plan that we wanted to pull forward were things like encouraging non-auto modes of transportation, our commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for the county, and really that recognition of how important transportation is to people's lives. We also looked at the current MTP. Many of you probably already know this, but it was adopted in 2007. And while it has a lot of great information in it, we've changed a lot of the county since then. We've also had a lot of new transportation and technology advances happen since 2007 that the plan doesn't really address. So we kind of did a scan to see what are the things that are helpful to understand that are in this plan that we want to carry forward, and what are opportunities for improvement to either reflect that we've done as a county and committed ourselves to, again, like Vision Zero, or what are things that we should think about refreshing as we create this transportation plan. So things that we saw that are in there is the commitment to just multiple modes of transportation in our current plan. That's important. That's something that's going to be carrying forward. Just a lot of the foundational projects that came from this transportation plan that have transformed how people are able to move around the county in the last 15 years. We also saw some gaps within the transportation plan. We have 6 modal elements that provide really good guidance for the one mode that they speak to, but don't talk to how we think about them together. Like if we have corridors where we need to be moving people in lots of different ways, how do we make those decisions? Equity in the way we understand and think about equity today is not really reflected in the transportation plan. It's equity of modes, not that commitment to racial equity that the county has. Our sustainability goals have changed as a county, and there are just a lot of different ways people move around the county that weren't contemplated in the current transportation plan. We also looked at a couple of precedent plans from other jurisdictions to see how they framed their vision and goals. What can we glean from them? What's helpful to understand? We looked at Washington, D.C.'s Move DC, a local example. We looked at Richmond Connects that had a very strong equity emphasis in the development of its plan. We also looked at San Diego, which had a strong kind of integration of sustainability as well as the way they tracked their plan. And we also kind of looked at an international example to see what somewhere outside of the United States is doing. We looked at Brussels. It's also kind of part of a large national capital region, just like we are, and looked at how they formed their plan. What we saw as themes emerging from these plans were things that we also are talking about and thinking about ourselves. The importance of equity, sustainability, Vision Zero, how different jurisdictions approach modal priority. And we also gleaned a lot about how they are creating and tracking their goals and metrics for the plan. All things that maybe right now aren't something we'll talk about. That's a lot more of what we'll do in phase 3 of the plan after we have the vision and goals to guide us to create the policies and the modal priorities that we'll get into as part of our phase 3 engagement. But we want to celebrate the amazing engagement we had both in phase 1 and phase 2. We launched publicly on Monday, October 7th, and we're live on the web until Sunday, November 17th in the fall. We had 42 days of public engagement that was supported by 28 events, 2 open houses, 5 pop-ups, 10 canvassing, and 11 listening sessions that were done intentionally with groups that we know are less likely to come to us. More, they're underrepresented in things like the community questionnaires, feedback forms. They're not going to come to us, so we went to them. Across all of these in-person events, we had a little over 8,000 interactions with people. 23% of those were in Spanish. We had translators at every single one of our public-facing events. The questionnaire got almost 2,500 hits from community members during phase 1. The interactive comment map had a little over 2,000 unique comments in it, and the webpage was visited over 10,000 times. So we had a robust amount of engagement in the fall when we were asking people how they want to move, what works for them today, what they want to see change in the future, and what do they value from a transportation network. And we had kind of 6 key takeaways from the varying ways that we engaged with people. This wasn't just from open houses or just what we heard at listening sessions, but themes emerged across the different types of engagement, which was really helpful for us to know that this wasn't just one specific group's concern, but that they were really rooted in the foundation of the community's desire for transportation. The first is that, honestly, transportation in Arlington today is pretty good, but that doesn't mean it can't be better. People walk. They walk today. It is the most common way people get around the county, but they want to walk more in the future and they want to feel comfortable while they do it. People value the public transportation network in the county, both metro and bus, and they think it can be improved in the future, specifically the bus and its reliability and their ability to take it. Specifically, time and reliability across all modes are very important for people. They want to know that when they decide to take a trip, that they're going to be where they need to be when they want to be there. It's so important to them that they can count on transportation to be an important conduit of their daily lives. Safety across all modes is an important thing that people worry about. As a pedestrian, as a driver, as a bicyclist, when people take the bus, they're concerned about safety. It is important to them. And we heard that equitable access, equity in our transportation network is something our community prioritizes. So those are really kind of the 6 key themes that we heard across all of phase 1 engagement. We took that, we thought about it, we ruminated on it, and we went out to phase 2 engagement with a draft set of goals and a vision to guide them. We're going to talk a bit more about them, but as part of phase 2 engagement, we asked people if they thought it hit the mark. Were our statements reflective of what they shared in the past? Is it reflective of what they think the county is working towards, what the community wants to see out of transportation? And if not, what would they change? What should we tweak? How can we make these better? We went out knowing that the draft vision and goals that we took out to the community were going to look different by the time we took them to the advisor group after phase 2 engagement, by the time we came here and by the time we went to the board, would not be what we brought out with phase 2. So we were out in the community for a little over a month. We had 34 days of public comment. We actually launched intentionally at Field of Heritage. It was a wonderful event. We heard from a lot of different people. We also went to skate night at Thomas Jefferson and had like 10 and 11-year-olds talking to us about transportation. It was so fun. Literally, the word fun was brought up by so many of the kids when we asked them what they wanted the transportation to be like. They wanted their trips to be fun. Like, we don't get that response from adults. And I valued that input of like, I want to enjoy it. Like, I just don't want to get where I'm going. I want it to be something I look forward to. We did this through 2 open houses, 4 pop-up events, 7 canvassing events, and again, those 11 listening sessions where we went to different community groups that we just knew weren't going to be able to come to us. 3 of those were done in Spanish, where we had people telling me what the group was saying, because it wasn't something that I'm able to do on our own. We knew translation was very important. This time we had about 4,200 interactions at our in-person events, 14% of those in Spanish. We got a lower response rate on our feedback form this time. The feedback form was, a little less fun. We're not asking what you value, what you want to see change, how you want to like do things differently. We were just asking for kind of feedback on the vision and goals. We got 291 responses, but the website got 5,000 hits. So people were still coming to the website. They were probably just taking a look at the vision and goals, seeing what the statements were and being like, those seem relatively in line. If you want to get into the weeds, you took the feedback form. But we still got a lot of great feedback from the in-person events, from our listening sessions, and these vision and goals are still foundationally rooted in the robust public engagement we had in phase one. So high level, what we heard coming out of phase two was that the draft vision and goals that we shared were relatively reflective of the feedback that we heard from phase one. People saw kind of how we got where we were and why we had the draft vision and goals that we did. People noted that the vision statement should have a stronger statement about sustainability. People generally supported the goals. There was somewhere around 75 to 80% good to very good on the questionnaire about whether or not people thought the vision and goals supported Arlington's values. It was really important to people that the goals be people-centric. People who are using transportation, that's fundamentally important. People just don't want our transportation network to be safe. They want to feel safe while they use transportation. And then we really heard from a lot of people that reliability is just one of the most important things to them when they think about transportation and what we should be working towards from a goals perspective moving forward. At a high level, we kind of like to remind people as we start talking about the specifics of the vision and goal statements are that they are high level. They're our aspirational vision of the future. They don't get into the weeds. They don't get into the specifics. We're not talking about explicitly how something was going to happen or where it's going to happen. It's how the big picture of what we're working towards. Eventually, our vision and goals will be supported by a number of policies that get into those weeds, that do the how, that have the details. A lot of these goals, you can probably already start to populate different policies that you care about underneath them. Some of what we even heard from the TC's comment letter at the advisory group meeting a couple of weeks ago had a couple of things that we were already going, those are 100% going to be reflected in policies. Things like our economic development considerations, curbside management, how we manage parking, and the importance of infrastructure. All of those are things we see really coming to light in how we craft policies. But we do need a vision and goals that allow for those policies to have a home. Move DC kind of provides a good example of how we see this coming together, where we've got our vision that overarches everything, goals that are supported by policies that are then have strategies that work to implement them, and metrics that we use to track our performance towards the vision and goals. So at a high level, forgive me while we really did use this public process to iterate on the vision and goal statements. From phase one engagement, we developed the first draft of vision and goals. We went out to the public with those in phase two. We took what we heard from the public and we refined those vision and goals. We went to our advisory group and an interdepartmental working group that we had, and we shared those and we heard more. And we now have a set of proposed vision and goal statements that we plan on bringing to the county board that we're sharing with you tonight, so that you're kind of in the loop and know what's going to happen before we do the formal board process. So to kick it off, we've got our draft vision statements. We went out to the community with Arlington's transportation network enables people of all backgrounds and abilities to move safely, comfortably, and seamlessly. Everyone can depend on a variety of transportation options to get them where they need to go, when they need to be there. Arlington focuses on making travel a good experience for people, connecting them with nature, friends, family, and jobs. Overall, people did like the vision statement. They thought it hit on a lot of the priorities that they had as a community member. We heard, again, not just from the community, but from other portions of feedback that sustainability should be more prevalent in the statement. We got a number of comments from a lot of different people, one of them a commissioner, that the final clause was not kind of reflective of all of the different places people need to get in the county, and that jobs was a limiting statement. And that the statement should be more vision, more people focused. A lot of that is similar to what we heard from the TC in your feedback to the from the advisory group, that we want a people-centric statement. there should be some sort of transit-focused, car-free, carbon-neutral network statement. That it's not just a variety of transportation options that matter, but they need to be high quality. And we also heard again that feedback that it's not just jobs. There's a lot more places that people need to go, and that your age also matters. It's just not backgrounds and ability, but your age can be a consideration when you travel. So we have refined the statement, and the current proposed vision statement is people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities can move safely, comfortably, and seamlessly in Arlington. Everyone can rely on a variety of quality, sustainable transportation options to get them where they want to go when they need to be there without having to depend on a car. Arlington focuses on making travel an enjoyable experience for people, connecting them with nature, friends, family, and opportunities. So you'll see kind of those bolded statements. Those were the edits that we made to be reflective of what we heard from the community. We want to see and show kind of how we did change these statements from what we heard. I'm going to do this for each of the goals. So the first goal that we have, we're doing them in alphabetical order because our goals are a set. One goal is not more important than the others. They complement each other and they work towards our vision. So the first goal that we'll talk about today is equitable and inclusive. What we went to the community with was create a welcoming, comfortable, and accessible transportation system for people of all backgrounds and abilities, while working to eliminate historical disparities in transportation policy and investment. What we heard from the community and what we heard from the Transportation Commission is that affordability is important to equity. It doesn't matter if the system's equitable if you aren't financially able to take it. That is a huge component of transportation for people. We heard a lot of positive feedback about the inclusion of historical disparities. A number of the listening session groups we went to said thank you for acknowledging that where I live, that my community has not had the same investment and opportunities that other portions of the county have. And in this specific statement as well, we heard the comment that ages is a part of an equitable transportation system. So both the refined goal and the proposed goal are the same. We didn't make tweaks after we went to the advisory group and the working group. It now reads, create a welcoming, affordable, and accessible transportation system for people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities, while working to eliminate historical disparities in transportation policy and investment. Our second goal is livable. What we heard generally is that people liked this goal statement. They recognized a lot of the feedback that they'd given us about what they're concerned about in their daily lives from a transportation perspective in this goal. We also heard that people don't just want their quality of life to be maintained, they want it to be improved. And some people thought that maybe this was just a little bit broad and a little bit aspirational as a goal and could almost be a vision statement. What we went to the community with was create a transportation system that maintains and improves quality of life, affordability, economic vitality, physical health, and mental well-being, and a sense of community. Following that feedback, we have a refined goal, same as the proposed goal. Actually, we made two pivots. So we went to the advisory group with create a system that improves quality of life, affordability, economic vitality, physical and mental well-being, and a sense of community. What we heard from the advisory group was that it's not just the things that it does for people, but it's the spaces that we create out of our transportation system are so important. And we as staff kind of had an aha moment and we're like, yes, that is so important. So much of what we think from a policy perspective about streets as places and public art, it needs a goal, and we always thought of it in livable. But with that feedback from the advisory group, we modified it further to read, create a transportation system that provides enjoyable spaces and improves quality of life, affordability, economic vitality, physical and mental well-being, and a sense of community. Goal number 3 in alphabetical order that we went to the community with is connected, which is provide an interconnected transportation network that is intuitive, dependable, and well-maintained. enabling people and goods to seamlessly reach their destinations. Generally, people liked the statement. They agree that a network is really important, and an interconnected network that you can transfer modes on well is something that they really want. For a number of people, the term connected or the name connected didn't resonate as the goal. They liked the statement, but they thought it needed a different name. Reliable really came up as the name that people were talking about. And that we also heard for this one from phase 2 engagement, that it's not just trips in the county, but people need to leave. On a somewhat daily basis, a good portion of our community members work in a different jurisdiction, so that the regional connections are really important to people too. So we heard that, and we refined the statement to say that it's reliable as the goal. And that refined statement was provide an interconnected transportation network that is dependable, easy to use, and well-maintained, enabling people and goods to seamlessly reach their destinations in the county and region. When we went to the advisory group, we had a little bit of a dialogue and a conversation about whether or not it needs to be easy to use or if it should be convenient. And a lot of people really felt that convenient was what they wanted out of their transportation network. We heard that and we modified it. We also heard that we have all people in front of our other statements, and that to be as inclusive of people as possible, we should carry that forward here. So we made those modifications, and the goal now reads, provide an interconnected transportation network that is dependable, convenient, and well-maintained, enabling all people and goods to seamlessly reach their destinations in the county and region. For safe, we went to the community with prioritize safety for all people and eliminate transportation-related deaths and serious injuries. Everybody said, yes, this is a goal that they need to see. They want to see people need to be safe when they travel, both from the Transportation Commission and from our listening sessions and the different ways we heard from the community. It's not just about being safe. You need to feel safe too. You can statistically be safe from crashes, but if you feel uncomfortable while you're walking, or if you feel uncomfortable while you're riding a bike, you're not going to do it. So it's also making sure that our trips are comfortable, that people feel like they have a safe transportation network. And we heard that. So both the refined and proposed goal are the same. We didn't tweak this after advisory group and interdepartmental conversations, but it's now prioritize a safe and comfortable travel experience for all people and eliminate transportation-related deaths and serious injuries. Our fourth goal is sustainable. We went to the community with develop a transportation system that moves more people without more traffic, reduces environmental impacts, supports climate resiliency, and connects people with nature. In general, people are like, yes, sustainability is very important to our community. It's something we need to work towards. A lot of feedback said it shouldn't be less traffic, it should be without more traffic. It's not just about keeping the status quo, but we should be working towards moving people in different ways. And we also heard some kind of more wonky feedback that this should align more closely with the county's climate resolution. So we modified it to a refined goal of develop a transportation system that moves more people with less traffic, minimizes overall environmental impacts, and advance climate protection, adaptation, and resilience. When we went to our interdepartmental working group, and especially with the advisory group, we heard from people that minimizes overall environmental impacts really felt like a negative connotation for transportation in the environment, that they wanted to have a more positive perspective on what transportation does and on what we can do from a transportation perspective. We heard that. We also had a lot of comments kind of about including an explicit CO2 emissions statement in this, and we think that's important. That's a policy. It's not the goal statement. There's a lot of different pieces that will work towards this goal statement that we know are important. But hearing that kind of more positive component of this goal, we've proposed now that it's develop a transportation system that moves more people with less traffic, supports a cleaner and greener environment, and advances climate protection, resilience, and adaptation. The last goal is transparent and accountable. We went out to the community with deliver and maintain a transportation network that addresses community priorities, acknowledges trade-offs, and builds public trust through exceptional stewardship of resources. I think one of the biggest things, and this happened most at those listening sessions that we did, is that we had to explain this goal. When we did, people really liked it. They really liked the intent about the fact that we would be intentional with how we spent county finances on transportation investments, that we'd look at kind of what can we do on a street and whether or not we can really do everything, or do we have to prioritize the bus over parking, or do we have to prioritize the bike over a turn lane? Lots of different conversations about that, but we had to explain it almost every single time. So we realized we needed a more plain language way of saying what we intended by this. And we also heard a little bit of feedback that this should have a greater emphasis on how decisions are made. We hear that, and that's what every single one of those metrics and policies is going to get to, but the goal itself doesn't speak to how the decisions are made. So we refined the goal and went to the advisory group with, and it maintains the same statement in our proposed goal, is clearly prioritize and communicate competing demands within the transportation network and responsibly manage public resources to deliver and maintain an exceptional transportation system. That is the set. One vision, 6 goals. We have some near-term next steps. We are here tonight to share these with you. We are excited to share them. We'll be going to the long-range planning committee on Wednesday to share them with the planning commission, because at the end of the day, the transportation plan is an element of our comprehensive plan. And then we'll be coming back to the TC and PC as action items in May or June before we go to the county board and ask them to endorse this vision and these goals as kind of what we are working towards for the plan. As part of that endorsement, we hope that they say, yes, do this, build a plan that creates this, and then we will. But we really need that endorsement from the board before we do that, because we need the buy-in to these vision and goals so that we can create the policies, identify the priority modes on our network to create the network that the county needs to meet its vision. So at a even higher level, after we have that endorsement from the board in the summer, we'll be coming back in the fall, tentatively early November, with phase 3 engagement, where we get to talking about everything everybody wants to talk about. Our policies, the modal networks, where and how we envision different modes working together. The whole reason we know that we need this refreshed transportation plan. Phase 3 is going to be a lot of fun, and it is going to be a lot of difficult conversations, not just for staff, but within the community to really understand what we prioritize and why we prioritize it. So with that, I want to say thank you for having us here this evening. We appreciate it, and I'm going to hand it back over to the chair.
Yes. Thank you. I apologize for running late, like Chair Furman. Thank you for getting everything started. I'm gonna, since you were the liaison to that, you to lead with this other, but before that, I would just say this is clearly a very deliberate, very rigorous, thought out process. So I look forward to the county board supporting this. I mean, it's an incredible engagement process above and beyond, and you can see the many iterations that you went through. So you did a lot of work on this, and now I look forward to seeing the actual policies. The hard part. Vice Chair Furman.
Yeah, I really want to compliment the revised vision statement. I know I got to play a role in helping with this process, so I'm really glad where we landed with this. I was one of those folks pushing for connected to be changed to reliable, so really excited to see that. And I think the sustainability goal is really, it's in an appropriate place now. I agree, things like CO2 standards, those are things that belong in policies. It needs to be at a higher level. The goals need to be flexible so that we can change those things as they need to be over time. So I'm really excited to get to phase 3. I hope my fellow commissioners are excited to get there as well. And yeah, I just want to compliment the process so far. I'm really looking forward to hearing more as we continue down this path and get board approval to keep moving, so.
I agree with phase 3 is really needed, so I really want to get to that. All sorts of comments and ideas on those sort of things. But this does fit with what the comments we as a body had forwarded there clearly here, so I'm really comfortable moving forward with it.
I have a question. We talked a little bit about communicating in Spanish and English. Were there any other languages?
So, we had a couple of translators out at our different engagements. We had some, I'm gonna say it, oh my gosh, Amharic, and we had, Mongolian translator actually at one point. But all of our materials, that were at our pop-ups, our rack card, were translated into the 6 most commonly spoken languages. So at Arlington Public Schools, so English, Spanish, Mandarin, Mongolian, Amharic, and yes, brain is forgetting, so I apologize. And we actually had our card in Braille as well.
Cool. Definitely appreciate that. I love these goals. I really appreciate being able to see the feedback that we provided as a commission going back into the language. Remember we chatted about that a couple of commission sessions ago. And also really appreciate the transparency goal being rewritten in plain language. I think we see that so much. We get so caught up in the high density language that can come with whatever you specialize in, right? And being able to make sure that we do have a goal that kind of shows that accountability, but also is like very easily interpreted is a hard thing to get to. So good job.
I also actually was at one of your pop-ups. It was at the Arlington Black History Museum.
Listening sessions.
Yes, the listening session. It was really wonderful because it felt like anyone could go, and not only with the material and the people who weren't policy wonks, it did feel like it was a community space instead of just being a very sterile meeting, right? And I think that was my personal experience, but iterating that over how many times those were done, I would imagine that people felt like, oh, this is actually a community conversation versus someone coming in with a little clipboard being like, okay, give me your answers, and then you just. So I really appreciated the kind of like homey feel that came with all of that.
We're fortunate to have our former chairman here. And staff has already presented. Anything?
Where's your presentation?
No, I'm
I'm the chair of our advisor group. I think you all know.
I'm just here to tap out the chairs in this company.
It is a little weird to have
They're
you
a
walk in and go on that side and not this side.
They're a little, maybe it's just this one, but they're a little squirrely.
But we also have a former Transportation Commission member also sitting on the other side.
That's
So,
Got one more down in front.
I know.
I think it's just your chair.
I can't. see
Like,
not
It is
back.
very.
It goes a long way.
Oh, mine doesn't.
Well, if no one has anything else, oh.
I'll make it quick. Really thank you for the great presentation and all the work that went into this phase 2 process. I got to experience one of the listening sessions firsthand and helped co-organize it. It was 2 listening sessions, one in phase 1, one in phase 2. They were both really well done, and I appreciated the great conversations we had there. A lot of the takeaways that we discussed at the end of those listening sessions made their way onto the revised goals. I think almost everything we talked about did. And that's really great to see how well you're listening and making changes based on public feedback. And I cannot wait for phase 3. So thank you very much. Great work.
Commissioner Hussain.
Yeah, great work. I think the sustainable goal, I'm glad it has a more positive, wording to it, which yeah, it's good to have that kind of positive view of it, which is great. And then I like the fact that you guys had, you put the region in the reliable goal. I thought that was something that it's really good to have us in context of where we live. So it's, yeah, fantastic work. I'm really excited about phase 3.
Commissioner Hussain's point, our Arlington logo is actually a regional logo. True. So this totally, that now totally fits in with our being in the diamond.
The look.
I think, the thing that I like most about it is that, it focuses on improving, not just maintaining the status quo, but really moving the needle and not resting on our laurels. So I think that's something that'll be useful to the Transportation Commission and other commissions down the road when we evaluate projects, kind of to constantly keep pushing the needle further and making a better, transportation network. So, thank you all for that.
I do have one question. Where in all of this do we fit in working with transportation partners like VDOT and WMATA, where we are often stymied by what they do, and not even because they object, it's just they're ponderous. And so the coordination is really, really important. So we have all these other entities that we have no choice but to work with and affect our transportation on a daily basis. How are we going to get that recognized or somehow built into all of this?
So we do have an interjurisdictional group that we also talk to. We've done that a couple of times now, and we've just kind of been like talking them through. This is, to everybody's kind of point, this is the fun stuff, not the easy stuff, but the rah moment. Phase 3 is where it's going to be a lot more nuanced in our conversations. And it's where we create policies about how we do those interactions and what we strive for in them. I think some of those will live under the new reliable goal, where we talk about the connection to the region and how we engage and what we do. We can't say explicitly, how we formulate that, but those relationships have even been improving over, the last decade. And we can build on that and see what's been working through kind of our engagement with them, and build on that with a policy in the plan and a framework about how we go about doing projects in the future.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have so many questions for these.
Don't intimidate.
They're friendly. Don't think that anything needs to do
To Commissioner Liatomi's point, I have been on the other side of the table and it
that.
Thank you all.
We can share one.
No.
I don't need the whole, I don't need the whole one as a song.
I'm the intro and the
I press one.
No, I have too many. Let's get over here. So what's the second one?
Just so you know, you guys will be presenting first, and then I'll turn it over to staff presentations. Then, well, we have to go for it first.
You flip it backwards.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it.
No, you're the, it's stuck. It's an older.
Yeah, pretty standard. And I asked. Yeah, okay, you have it. You have it. You have it. Yes.
So you put my bell.
Yeah.
I made that mistake.
It's like, but I should take I'm sorry.
She's been in both SPRs.
That could have been.
Okay.
At least, yeah, this could have been.
I'm saying.
Why not?
Going back 6 years. You have to pay for handouts. They don't have the whole.
No, I've been bothering them to get that out.
Yeah.
Better.
But the point is, guys, is that like, if anything like
Let's go.
yeah.
All right, so next on the agenda,
Yeah.
we have the 3033 Wilson Boulevard site plan development, and we will start with the development team's presentation, and then we'll turn it over to staff for presentation. And we did have one speaker who came before the meeting started, but then she decided to leave, so I asked her to send her oral comment, so I'll be sure to send those along to you once I receive them.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to.
Sure. I'll kick it off and I'll hand it over to Tom. Well, good evening, Transportation Commission members. I'm always happy to come back. I was a member before I started practicing law many years ago. Happy to be back and talk to you about this great project. I'm joined by my colleagues, John Galloway, Carlson Mendia, our civil engineer from Bowler, Jason Bachnick, Senior Vice President of Development from CAR, and Tom Argiers, who is the Development Director for CAR. We have Austin Holderness on the line as well, who's the Chief Development Officer for CAR. We have some folks from SKNI, our architects as well. We have a really good story to tell here. It's a great project. It's really gone through an iterative process as we've made changes and new proposals based off feedback from staff, particularly for the streetscape, which we'll talk about tonight, and also architecture to taper the neighborhood. And we think we have a really good transportation story to tell for all users, transportation users, drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists. And we're really excited to get your feedback today. With that, I'll hand over to Tom, who will walk us through our presentation, and then Joanne will take over.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. Just a brief agenda. We're going to go through a project overview, talk a little bit about the transportation and streetscape improvements that Matt just alluded to, and then spend some time talking about the multimodal transportation assessment. We hope that this project you'll see here is atypical for some of the newer developments you've seen, because we are electing to keep the below-grade garage. So that really informed a lot of the design decisions you'll see, and we'll touch on that and how that impacted a lot of the processes we moved through. So a little bit about us. We're an owner developer. We have assets in Boston, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and Austin, Texas. Jason here sitting next to me worked on the 2311 Wilson Boulevard project a few years back. And the rest of the team, as Matt alluded to before, is also listed there. So 3033 Wilson. Oh.
It's okay, we have paper copy.
Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is. So, for those who don't know, this is 3033 Wilson. It's highlighted in orange. It is catty corner to the Clarendon Metro entrance. It's a 1987 vintage office building that has struggled with office leasing, just like the other prevailing office buildings in Northern Virginia have. It's an older building. It's lower ceiling heights. It has a large loan, and so we looked at what we could do with it. And one of the obvious options was retrofitting it to be a new multifamily property. Okay, next page. That is the lab. So just a little bit of a high level description of the project. The current office building is 170,000 square feet. The below grade parking garage is about the same at about 160,000 square feet. The entire property is 75 feet to the top of the building, 95 feet when you consider the 20-foot penthouse, which is actually rather large because it houses a lot of cooling towers and mechanical equipment that service the building. What we're proposing to replace is a new, what we call 5/3 multifamily projects with 5 levels of construction over 3 levels of concrete at 309 apartments. And again, keeping the low-grade parking garage. To achieve the bonus density, we are looking at targeting a 0.35 green building bonus density target through the Arlington County Building Program, and then looking for about 88,000 square feet of bonus density. Next page. There we go. So here's a view of the project looking back towards the Clarendon Metro. Here's the ground floor. So to orient you all, next page. So the metro entrance would be to the northeast or upper left-hand corner of this plan. The plaza there is to remain with some improvements. So you've got North Highland page north, and North Garfield, page south. We have a garage plan here coming up, but the garage actually takes up the entirety of the site. It goes essentially lot line to lot line from the neighborhood to what would be the right side of the page all the way to Wilson Boulevard. Because we're keeping the garage, we've also looked at keeping the office core. And so that really led us to keep the main entrance and lobby of the building down at the corner of North Garfield and Wilson. So those three elevators, shafts that you can sort of faintly see painted in there are the existing locations of the elevator shafts. We're looking at providing 6,000 square feet of retail, the loading dock just adjacent to the retail, and we'll go into some more details as to why the loading dock ultimately landed there. Again, because we're keeping the parking garage, the entrance to that garage in the upper right-hand corner is going to remain in the same place as it is today. Okay, next page.
This is a silly question.
Yeah, of course.
But the garage, just to confirm, that's a dual way in and out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get my bearings.
So hopefully this next page actually helps. So you can see the garage, delivery garage. And it really does go from lot line to lot line. So for those who are interested in the details, all along Wilson Boulevard, where you see the property line, that is actually the existing sidewalk. And so that'll play into some of the details you see as we walk through this, the rest of the plans. So if we go to the next page. One thing we heard from staff, folks in the county that we talked to, is they're really interested in making sure that this is a toolbox, really, an emblematic building when you come off the metro. And so the architects, SK and I, spent a tremendous amount of time focusing and carving and figuring out how to make the massing really be something they would call pretty elegant. And I think we would agree. Moving on to the next page. So that is the corner of Highland and Wilson. The next page is the corner of Wilson and Garfield, where the entrance to the residential building is. And then the page after that is a blow up of the entrance. The architects spent a lot of time thinking about what would be architecturally, say, cogent and like what would really fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. And they sort of settled on this new Art Deco interpretation. There's a lot of brick buildings in that neighborhood, some articulation and ornament. And so you'll see if we're still on this page, and this is the Wi-Fi, I think is sort of here. So this page, you'll sort of see that there's interesting art, brickwork, ornamental brickwork, banding lattice. And if we move to the next page, there should be a picture of the corner of the building, just showing that ornament work is meant to carry throughout all of the architectural massing. Moving on to the next page, you'll see a nice blow up of some of the details where the architects started having some fun, exploring different ways of pushing and pulling bricks to try to provide some relief. Okay, so let's get to the last page. That's weird. Huh, it's so strange. So if we go to the next page, you'll see an image. There we go. There you go. Okay, there we go. So what you'll see here is the reimagined plaza. We spent a lot of time working with staff and landscape architects to really craft something that provided a lot of tree canopy, something that provided spaces where the community could feel they can come and sit and enjoy themselves. But we also want to be sensitive to the retail space behind, right? An activated retail area, sort of plaza really helps make the space feel, enlivened and accessible and a place folks want to be. Moving to the next page, you'll see turning down Wilson. So if you walk down the sidewalk just a little bit more, one of the things we always wanted to include is elements of biophilia and landscaping to really beautify the streetscape. But I know that we also know that that is one of the county's objectives from a sustainability standpoint, is one of the versions of sustainability objectives. So we found some interesting ways to, at the ground floor, bring down landscaping to make that an enjoyable space. How am I doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So the next page is it's just a diagram showing the relationship to the single family residences to the north. We spent a lot of time with staff talking about what this relationship should be, what the correct angle is, how to be imposed, not be too imposing, and really respect the light and air. And we ultimately ended up with this version. And one of the nice things it allowed us to do, all the way 2 pages, it's allowed us to provide, man, this is really ruining the reveal. Allowed us to provide a rooftop garden and a space where the residents be able to, where the residents will be able to, pick tomatoes, plant some herbs, and really make it a source of community.
Will there be bees?
There could be.
No, I mean a beehive.
Oh, like at home, like binders and beehives. We could certainly look at that. Yeah, we've done it before. Yeah, for sure.
More so asking, is there plans for a hive to go up there? Because I think I'm seeing that more and more.
Yeah,
I don't state whether or not I'm terrified of bees or anything here, but.
yeah, of course. Yeah, that's something we could definitely look into. I'm not sure to your fear, I'm not sure the best place to be right next to the garden, but we have a ton of roof space. That is definitely something that and it is something we have, and I think at least 5 of our operating office buildings.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a fun amenity.
Go get stung for Friday afternoon.
This is okay. So how about this? Let's really quickly jump to this sustainability benefit slide. So as you mentioned before, we're going to be going through the green building incentive policy, the 0.35. One of the cool things about keeping the garage is that plays a huge part in the sustainability profile and narrative of the building. So that's a big part of our strategy. The other 2 policy points we're looking at is social equity on the operations and maintenance staff, as well as providing EV car charging infrastructure of 4% for day 1 and 15% for the future. Project will be LEED Gold. Here are some fun stats for us keeping the parking garage, but also using wood frame construction as opposed to concrete. So by preserving the garage, the 160,000 square foot garage, we're essentially sequestering 11,000 acres worth of forest for a year, which is pretty cool. And the top 5 floors of the wood frame structure, which is 190,000 square feet, is equivalent to 5,500 acres of forest being sequestered in a year. So that's something we've become super proud about in this project. Of course, we were looking at and will provide bird-friendly materials. Again, we've talked about the biophilia. One thing with the heat island reduction is there is a current parking lot at grade. And so by removing that parking lot, and replacing it with newer reflective roofs, some green roofs, it's really going to reduce the heat island effect in the neighborhood. And of course, we were trying to target the 24%, and we will target the 24% energy performance reduction. So let's jump. Jump to this side, or should we go? I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. So let's go to the benefits for residential. So at a high level, of course, we all know the headwinds at the office market. So we think by replacing this with a multifamily project, it will, reinvigorate the neighborhood, provide a new sense of energy. We also think, we know with the 309 units that are coming, we're also going to be providing some benefits to the housing affordability program. So we will be providing 4 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedroom units, certified affordable units of the property, and a significant contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund for the base density. Getting to the point of why we were all here, the public infrastructure improvements. So with the work, we will be providing a dedicated bike lane along Wilson Boulevard. There are improvements to the pedestrian traffic signal infrastructures and modernizing the intersection of North Garfield and Wilson. With that, we will be getting a curb cut on North Garfield Street. North Garfield and North Highland Street, we are reworking the widths so they more naturally flow into the single family neighborhood to the north, while also adding parking spaces because we're removing the parking lot in the back at grade. And then of course, the public plaza that we just saw before. And then we covered the sustainability. Moving on to transportation. So as I mentioned, preserving the garages is truly key to the project. Of course, we've touched on the sustainability benefits, but there's also a reduction in construction timeline, which is going to benefit the neighborhoods and the residents of that neighborhood very significantly. Because it's a large garage, it currently has about 400 spaces, and with the reprogramming and the restriping of those spaces to bring them up to current code, we're going to we're reprogramming a lot of those spaces. The new capacity is going to get to about 324 spaces. So with that, because we have a lot of extra space, we're looking at an expanded bike room with individual bike lockers. This is something we heard speaking with the community through the SPRC process. Not only do they want a space where they can lock their bike, but they also want a little bit of a larger space where they can store their kids' bikes, so they can store other things, kids' toys as well. We're looking at a scooter charging room. There will be storage for the residences on B12 and B3. And then, of course, we have some natural MEP upgrades and codes.
What do you mean by luxury residence?
So it will be additions and they will be individual storage units. So keep working. As I mentioned before, we're getting to 324 spaces with the expected residential use, including the retail and the visitors. We expect there to be roughly 275 spaces being used, which means that there's essentially 449 excess spaces. One thing we heard from the community and through the process, Lion Village specifically, is that they're actually excited that our building has excess parking because that means it will, take folks off the street and sort of lessen some of the parking requirements that the neighbors run into. So they're excited about that. The church to the north of us also on Sundays and Saturdays for different services will use a parking garage for spaces. So we think what we're trying to say is we think that those spaces will get used. Go to the next page. It's going to be the plan you all have already seen. It's got a little bit more detail. So I've covered the plaza. So you'll see along Wilson, you'll see the bike lane improvement that we're adding. We will be adding 2 dedicated rideshare parking spaces in front of the lobby. That was something the neighbors also were very keen on exploring because bike lanes typically get clogged with Uber drivers or caviar drivers, so that they were excited about that. Visitor U-bike parking at both corners and intersections. Again, improved traffic signal and pedestrian infrastructure at the corner of North Garfield and Wilson. And I know it doesn't look this way, but I've got a picture later that shows how we're actually, we're tapering the streetscape along Garfield to the neighborhood a lot more elegantly than it is today. So we go to the next page. Just for fun, here's a picture of the current building. So you can see in relation to the red lot line. You can also see the existing parking spaces at grade and the existing garage ramp. Next page, storage EV offerings. So as I said before, We're looking at 324 spaces. We've also identified spaces for EV car charging and future EV car charging. And then those residential units you were asking about are in the northwest corner of the page. That equates to, at the 4% and the 15%, that equates to 13 EV spaces on day one and 49 spaces.
So 13 and 49 are added together.
Here's an image of the Viper. So we're targeting 126 different bike parking spaces in different configurations, whether it's the Darrow Decker, individual storage lockers, or those individual sort of fenced off locker spaces with, of course, the lockers themselves. The other thing we're excited to highlight is that there's two ways to get to this bike room. Is you can either come down the parking garage ramp, or you can actually come down the freight, which is located approximate to the bike room grade. Okay, moving on to the loading slide. So as I mentioned before, we're keeping, and so we really were required to stick within the confines of the existing parking grid, and so that led to a lot of challenges. One of them was finding a good location for the 40-foot bay, and the other, I think it's 25-foot bay. We found them, and it situated itself pretty well. We thought it's next to the retail, which is great for the retail uses, so that you don't have the retailers not using the loading dock. They're more inclined to use the loading dock as opposed to loading off of the street. It's actually catty corner from North Hartford, so it was improved. There were improved turning radii for the large 18-wheelers to move in and out, as opposed to being farther down the street adjacent to the neighborhood or next to the garage entrance ramp. And the neighbors were actually more excited to have it a little farther away from the single-family houses. So it actually sort of worked itself out. Okay, next page. Because we're going from an office project to a multifamily project, the peak hour vehicle trips comes down significantly by 240 vehicle trips specifically, and 1,000 fewer daily vehicle trips compared to the fully occupied office. Again, I've talked about some of the pedestrian improvements and the bicycle improvements and the ride sharing, so let's just keep going. Those following on at home, I'm on this slide. And it's a blow up of the plaza. Working with staff, we really wanted to make sure that the 8-foot sidewalk that connected you to the intersection and down Wilson and down Highland was preserved. We ultimately were able to do that. The landscaped area in the center, we were able to work with the landscape architects and provide some tree canopy coverage. So again, trying to create a nice, inviting, welcoming space where folks actually want to sit. To your point about the bees, the landscape architects are looking at putting pollinator species everywhere. So it's something we're all excited about. And again, it's right off of the retail space. So we think that the retail user that can go in there can get benefit, the community can get benefit, but also everything. And the next slide is just the image, which we all see before, of the plaza. And then very quickly, we wanted to include the streetscape sections. The first one you'll see is Highland. The point I just want to emphasize is you've got the clear sidewalk zone, you've got the 6-foot tree pit, and then you've got a planting zone that abuts the building. Moving on to Wilson, as I mentioned before, we're actually underneath, the parking garage is actually underneath the sidewalk, so you can actually see that in the diagram there. Most of the sidewalk clear width actually sits on top of the parking garage, and then we're able to find space to improve the tree pits, but then also the bike lane there on Wilson. And then the next one is Garfield, which again, 8-foot clear sidewalks, 6-foot furniture and tree zone, and then we're able to provide planting. So the next slide, which is side by side of the satellite pictures. shows what I was talking about in terms of how we're able to taper the sidewalk to better meet the way it currently is designed in the single family neighborhood. So above, you'll see that it's sort of, jogs, and you keep going, the jogs as you get closer down the street towards the single family homes. And then the design plan below, you'll see we sort of straightened all of that out and then just sort of died into the natural curve that meets the neighborhood. And one of the benefits about this also with us losing the parking lot in the back is we have increased the amount of parking spaces on that street for folks coming or otherwise living there.
Narrow the intersection?
Sorry,
Did you narrow the intersection here?
It is narrowed, yeah.
Yeah.
Shorter pedestrian crossing.
yeah, you can see that improvement that we made. And then I think the last slide. It's just a high level summary of the multimodal assessment.
And a multimodal transportation assessment was prepared for the proposed redevelopment. It was, the scope of the study was based off meetings with county DES staff. The study includes assessment of transit, pedestrian, bicycle, vehicle, and safety operations in the area surrounding the site. The key conclusion findings of the study were that as mentioned before, that the residential uses would generate fewer trips when compared to the fully occupied office space that is out there today. It has both peak hour and daily. The site is well served by transit with both the Clarendon Metro Rail Station in the immediate vicinity, as well as numerous bus lines. In addition, it is adjacent to a connected network of sidewalks and bike lanes. The analysis found that the adjacent intersections would continue to operate efficiently during peak hours. With the less intense use, no off-site transportation improvements were necessary for mitigation. However, in the vicinity of the site, we are making frontage improvements, as we've shown in the slides, that include increased ball bounce for the shorter pedestrian crossing, as well as the traffic signal improvements. And these would help both pedestrian and bicycle access. In addition, we are finding the protected bike lane on the north side of Wilson Boulevard, which would help reduce conflicts with the on-street parking. In addition, the curb cut on North Garfield Street is proposed to be closed, which will help shift traffic away from the residential neighborhood and onto North Highland Street. And as required by this standard county conditions, we are going to participate in a transportation demand management plan to encourage the use of alternate modes of transportation by residents. And some of the key elements are on the slides, but it's various incentives for people to use other modes as opposed to vehicular modes.
Thank you. Well, thank you for bearing with me.
Let's make one quick point. It was implied in the presentation. I just want to put a finer point on it. I'm sure Joanne will talk about it. The streetscape on Wilson Boulevard is supposed to be 20 feet under the Clarendon sector plan. And one thing we worked out with staff, and we talked about in SPRC, is that because of the existing column grid, there's a pinch point once you get towards Garfield. And for that reason, we couldn't have the full 20 feet all the way. But for half the site on Wilson near the retail is full 20 feet. And then it gets down to 15.5 feet near the pinch point. But at all points, you have 8-foot clear sidewalk, and it's the narrowing comes out of the shy zone. So we think it's a pretty good solution, and we think it's going to work out well. But just want to point it out for you that that's one modification we're seeing.
I didn't share my screen.
All right, okay.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Joanne Gabor. I am with DES. If you're thinking, I don't know who you are and why are you here? The answer is Rob Gibson has been the DES planner for this project. He was unavailable tonight, so I'm filling in for him. He did prepare this presentation, so hopefully I'm going to answer all your questions. If not, I have a crash course I got the last couple days, and hopefully between all of us, we can answer any questions or we can follow up with you. This is 3033 Wilson Boulevard. We have a general land use plan amendment. We have a zoning text amendment, a rezoning, and a new site plan. Okay, we'll see how this goes. Okay, we have a general land use plan amendment, glove amendment. It is going from low residential to medium density mixed use for a portion of the site. We're incorporating this into the Clarendon Revitalization District. We're amending the zoning ordinance. The Clarendon Revitalization District has a number of elements that are codified, so we do have to do a zoning ordinance amendment as opposed to just a modification that we do typically for site plans. In this instance, we are modifying the max building height from 75 to 85, reducing the max building height from 75 to 65 on the northeast corner, which we said abuts the residential area, and removing the required step backs on Wilson Boulevard, North Highland. They're also rezoning a portion of this from R5 to C3. So the entire parcel is C3, and then we have the new site plan. Sorry, I'm not sure what to do. Yeah, we are, I really don't want to get ahead of myself. The next couple slides you're not going to see are going to be maps that talk about what the areas are that we are doing the GLUP amendment, the zoning ordinance change, and then the rezoning and the site plan.
Joanne,
Yeah.
do you mind emailing the presentation to me and I can send it out to them? Do you have, can you do that?
Yeah, I have a PDF of it.
That way we can follow.
Yep, let's do that. Yeah. We don't need slides, right? I can just talk.
I'm familiar with it, Seth and his mercy.
I'm sort of serious about that. If you guys are okay, I can just talk.
Yeah, that is the norm for some staff members.
Okay, let's do it. TC presentation. Okay, I sent it to you, but you're gonna get it in a minute. I'm just gonna talk. You saw most of the pretty pictures. I don't have as many pretty pictures. Okay, so we talked about, so the first thing is we do this GLUP amendment. And what's happening is basically the way the GLUP is today, the site is split between the GLUP, so we're cleaning up the GLUP. That's basically what we're doing. We're also aligning that Clarendon Revitalization District, so it follows that property line. Today, it's kind of cut through the middle of the property. So we want to clean that up. There's also the zoning ordinance amendments. Those are for height and step backs. For the Clarendon sector plan, the step backs were envisioned on the Wilson Boulevard site, so adjacent to the metro. We're actually moving those back to be where the residential is, so it tapers down to the residential area. That's the height. We also are rezoning. Again, there's just a small sliver that's R5 today. The rest of the site is C3, and we're cleaning that up so the entire site has the same zoning. As we talked about, we're keeping the garage. That's one of the main focuses of this project and one of the main benefits. But it also does have those, trade-offs with some of the streetscape issues that we've been talking about. So what we are seeing is the ground floor. We do have that amenity lobby entrance that's going to be at that corner of Wilson and Garfield. The loading that, again, is closer to Wilson. While it isn't for the sector plan, that is something that made sense because we're using the existing garage, provides the better turning movements farther away from the residential, so it seems like a better option. And then that garage entrance is staying adjacent to that residential area on the north end of the building on the Highland Street where it exists today. So the parking for 0.85 spaces for residential units. There is a lot of excess spaces in here. And so that's where the balance of what spaces are required. And then excess spaces, again, as they were talking about, depending on what the needs are, maybe it'll be public parking, short-term, long-term, monthly, something they'll be able to figure out. But the main point is we're not going to be conditioning the use of those spaces for the residential use, so they have the option to use those spaces as they see fit. They are meeting the requirements for the bike parking in the building and then around the site. We also, the Clarendon sector plan, it is codified, so there is streetscape requirements on Wilson Boulevard. It's 20 feet. On a portion of Highland, it's 18 from Wilson to Hartford. And then the rest of Highland and Garfield, it's 14 feet. And per this Clarendon sector plan, it's then parsed into a clear sidewalk, a landscape strip, and then a cafe zone. Around the entire property, we do have that 8-foot clear sidewalk, the 6-foot tree planting area. On Wilson, we do have a pinch point because of those existing columns that are staying. So there are areas where it is 15 feet, but at no point are we going to have less than an 8-foot clear sidewalk. And the other thing I think is important to point out, as we saw with some of the graphics they showed, is that clear sidewalk, it's very linear. It's not, like going all over the place. You don't really have to I have to jog left and right. It is a straight shot. So people will be able to use it. They'll be able to figure out where to go. It's the same with the tree pits. They're all going to be in a line. And then that variability is going to be against the building face. So some areas where it is going to be under the building overhang, there's going to be cafe zone area, place if there's a restaurant or retail, if they want to have some seats, they can use. And at a minimum, there's going to be at least 1-foot buffer. So we are at that 15-foot pinch point in a couple spots. On Highland Street, there is a section where the Clarendon sector plan talks about it being 18 feet. That's basically where that plaza is. So while, we're basically saying we have an 8-foot clear sidewalks, so a planting strip, that's 14 feet. But we have that extra 4 feet between the planting and the area for folks to walk. So it's something that we feel we are meeting. The street section's basically staying the same. People traveling each direction with that turn lane at Wilson and then parking on both sides as we get further away from Wilson. The rest of Highland Street and then Garfield, it is the 14-foot section for the sector plan. It's 8-foot clear sidewalk, 6-foot planting area, and then there is some variable buffer, which is planting area, shy zone, along the frontage. As the applicant showed you, they're also cleaning up Garfield the way that curb line is, so it makes a little more sense. And again, we're keeping the travel lanes essentially the same way they are, one in each direction, parking on both sides. The other community benefits unrelated to transportation for the bonus density is the LEED Gold certification for the 0.35 FAR, and then they are doing 8 on-site committed affordable units to make up the balance of their community benefits. We are currently at commissions. This is going to be heard at the May 5 Planning Commission meeting and the May 10 County Board meeting. Staff does support the project, and the slides you can't see, I have the entire text of the recommendation, club change, zoning ordinance amendment, rezoning, and adopting the site plan for your needs. And I'm here for questions.
Thank you. Seems like you want to go first.
Quick question. It's more about a housing question than a transportation one. Just want to make sure you said there were 49 underground parking spaces, correct?
Correct. 48 or 49. I think it's
Approximately 49.
okay. 49.
You have ballparking what would be the average rent for some of the market rate units, not the 8 caps?
Sorry, just I want to make sure Are you asking about the parking spaces or about the units themselves?
About the units themselves. So I'm thinking that you said there are 49 spaces that are basically excess, that won't be used at any given point in time. That's going to basically be a cost increase factor for the rent prices. Heard you mention that that's going to be something that the Lime Village Civic Association is excited about, but they're not bearing that cost. That's going to be on the residents. So I think there's a bit of like a perverse logic there that people who aren't going to be bearing the cost are excited about the excess parking spaces. So that's why I wanted to get an idea of what the average rent will be. And further to the point, is there any possibility of reconsidering that excess 49 parking spaces?
Well, taking your last question first, I mean, the spaces are already physically there, so we work really hard to find alternate uses for those spaces, but there's no practical solution to like condemn the cavity that physically exists, tonight over at that address. So keep that in mind a little bit. This isn't like new construction. We don't have that flexibility. To the beginning of your question, I'll answer the rent question, I guess. We think the average rent might be around $2,900 or $3,000 per month.
For one bedroom
Well, that's for like.
or on average?
That's for everything.
Yeah, that's like an average across the unit mix there. So the one bedrooms are gonna be cheaper than that, and then three bedrooms are gonna be more than that, for example. What I didn't quite follow the meat of your question, which is, I think
Well, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the non-required spaces, the people who are using those spaces would pay, extra either rent storage or be offsite users renting space there, like the church. There's I like the renters themselves would be paying for those spaces in a real sense, right?
Yeah, Matt, this is Austin from Carr. I can jump into, the renters, it's at their election whether they want to rent those space, so they will not bear any cost for those additional spaces if they don't want to rent them. So maybe you have a renter that wants 2 spaces and they can rent 2 spaces, but if they want 0 spaces, they'll get charged 0. So I think the way Lion Village looked at it is it was a real benefit because renters in other buildings can use these spaces and rent them and not park in the neighborhood or park on the street. So the renters, it's completely at their election, and these spaces will not affect their rent unless they want to lease extra spaces. So it's completely at their election, and they're not tied to their rent.
Commissioner Layton.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, some for Ms. Gabor and some for the the applicant. First, I think this works. I have no concerns about, even if pinch point reduced sidewalk, I'd still say go ahead with it because the benefits we're getting by keeping this garage in place so far outweigh whatever that narrowing would have been. Yeah, go ahead and do it anyway. But it's great that you preserve the width, the actual walking width anyway, so it becomes a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Garfield Street, thank you for recognizing that is, as it exists now, Lion Village is my neighborhood, so I know this street really well, and it always struck me as being absurdly wide or pointlessly wide. I'm really happy that is going to be addressed in this. It's a great opportunity to do that. Going further on that, I like that you're doing the bump out here because it really is a way wide crossing along Garfield. DES recently painted, and you can see it on one picture here, a painted bump out. I'm assuming that will stay even though it's not on the rendering, the proposed below.
You're talking about
On the applicant's presentation here. Okay, yes, you can see the painted bump out that DES recently put in, which is great. once this bump out is built, will we also keep that painted bump out on this across the street?
I assume so, as opposed to get rid of it or to build a bump out.
As opposed to getting rid of it or actually building a physical bump out?
Then this is, so that's what I wanted to clarify with you. So the applicant is not building any bump outs off-site. I don't have any reason to believe we would take away the striping. I don't think it's a top DES priority to complete a curb.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
curb extension is there.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so all the turning movements still work. So yeah, I have no reason to believe that that is gonna change on that corner.
Okay, that's fine, but the narrowing, that's a big deal. So I appreciate everybody doing that. To the applicant, for your TDM, is it gonna be the standard things like, fare cards for the residents? You also have one of those screens in the lobby about when the subway, the buses are gonna be arriving. Okay,
Yeah, it's all the standard conditions.
okay, great, also, presume great. Yeah, having all of those. Yeah, and I think I actually believe a loading dock, that's the most logical place for it. Didn't want it on Garfield, it really should be on Island and have to get closer to the Wilson is all around better, and for the retail. Yeah, one of the things that happens in that neighborhood are trucks stopping on the street to unload right in front rather than using the loading dock. So recognizing that that's going on, this would encourage those trucks to actually use that loading dock rather than stopping on Island or Wilson. That happens every morning on Clarendon, Wilson, and the streets. So, you know, I think that's a major improvement. Yeah, I think from the transportation viewpoint, this works very well. I'm very happy to see that you'll be used, and this is actually one of the things that didn't happen. You mentioned about Lime Villages, it's thrilled because all these extra spots. They keep saying, and I'm a Lime Village, first I used to be president of the Civic Association, but they keep saying that the buildings around don't have enough parking. All the new buildings don't have enough parking, all full. That isn't what we've heard here at Transportation Commission. Staff has told us consistently that along the RV corridor, the buildings have been underparked, that there's almost always spaces available in all of those buildings, that they're not being fully utilized. And in fact, your building, supposedly for all along, has never been fully utilized. That even in the evening when it was open to the public, those spaces were hardly ever used. Other than, I'm talking about the surface, I'm talking about the underground. Is this correct information that I have about the status of that garage? Because, and for the surrounding buildings, the residential buildings, that they are in fact underparked?
Generally, that's what we're seeing. I don't have any data about the buildings immediately surrounding this right on top of my hand. But that is generally what we're seeing across the county. It's part of why we did do that off-street, multifamily residential parking guidelines, and some of these came down drastically. Like in this site, if they built new, they could go down to 0.2 spaces per unit.
Yes, right next to the subway.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's where, right, we have these transportation studies that are done after, it talks about utilization of the garage, and that's what we use to continually just update that data to make sure that that is what we're still seeing. So I don't know who you've talked to, but I have no reason to believe that they are misconstruing or trying to mislead you. But generally, we are seeing that, yeah, people, they don't want cars, they don't need cars.
Okay, good, because again, I keep people in my neighborhood that know actually there's plenty of parking in these buildings. It's not a problem. They're not parking if they're parking in our neighborhood, it's illegal, and it's not because they don't have spaces available in their own buildings.
Correct.
Okay, good. That's what I needed to clarify in here.
I'll ask the applicant to talk about their specific garage.
Yeah, I was thinking about how to answer that. Our data is very noisy because the office building just hasn't performed well, frankly, since the beginning of COVID. And now, since COVID's ended, it's mostly vacant.
Well, I'm talking about pre-COVID.
Yeah, we didn't own it for that long before COVID, and I don't want to speak just off the cuff here. We just don't have that data with us tonight. We're happy to follow up if that's important to you. I mean, we're more than happy to share the data.
Not particularly, but I'm just anticipating potential things that could come up.
Okay, yeah, we'll have it for the next.
And I like the idea that you have it open to other developments that come up, because we have enough additional buildings presuming that to be built. we have seen a couple of projects that they're being marked by using unused space in surrounding buildings. So that you would be a donor would be great. So that when other buildings do come up in the Clarendon area, you could potentially be a resource to reduce the amount of parking in those buildings that would come up.
We have crafted condition with staff to allow for that too.
Yeah, and that's really good. So thanks. And I think we need to raise that at other meetings, that this is a possibility. So anyway, those are my questions. Thanks for indulging me.
Thank you. Other commissioners, Vice Chair Furman.
Yeah, I had a question about the barrier that we're expecting to utilize between the bike lane and the parking lane on Wilson Boulevard. Any information on what we expect that to be?
John, could you take that one?
It's something we're still working with staff. We have it rendered as a median. It's, I believe only 2 feet wide, so sometimes using a concrete median isn't the best practice there because it gets hit and moves. So it's something during CEP, and Joanne will correct me if I'm wrong, that we'll look at and go with staff's guidance on what that final median is.
As usual, I would propose something that is less flexible because we've seen those type of, medians be abused by vehicles that just decide, even though there is a parking lane there, they'll still cut into the bike lane for whatever reason. So I'd advocate for something that makes that more challenging to do. And then my second question is, how many bike racks are we expecting to be adjacent to the plaza and retail space? I know that was in the diagram. Or looks like there.
It's 12, 12.
Is that 12 up by Highland and then 12 down by Garfield?
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Is there an expectation that visitors or just non-residents will utilize the bike storage room at all, or that really is intended to be as a resident service?
We really think that should be a resident service, mostly for security reasons. That's the feedback we get from the Arlington community, residential projects.
And it makes sense to me. That was part of why I asked the question about the racks on the plaza. I think most people coming to that space are not going to utilize the underground garage if they are not residents of it. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't an anticipation that, well, they'll just park down there, because I think most people won't. They'll probably just park against street signs and other things if they can't find a rack.
System.
The commissioners. I have some questions for the parking on North Garfield Street. That will be paid street parking, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Let's see what.
I'll see what I say for all the projects. It is the county right away, so at any time, if we want to change the use, pick up and drop off for 15 minutes, 2 hour, 1 hour, 4 hour loading, that's something that we can do. If the applicant hypothetically says, hey, it'd be great if I could have a couple pickup drop off spaces, they contact county staff, we kind of do a survey of the area, because you don't want to just look at, like these 2 spaces and make a decision in the vacuum. And then we'll make a decision about if it makes sense, and then we would just go and re-sign it.
Okay. And the way you enter the bike room, it's over by the loading docks. There's an entrance and then a service elevator, correct? From what I was able to.
Yeah, so either you can either go down the garage entry.
Yeah.
So back to this plan, you either go down the ramp and then bike over, or you can come through essentially the loading dock. The freight is right next to the loading dock. You can take that out.
Will those elevators be big enough to fit bikes, or intended for bikes, or just meant for people walking down to get their bike?
It will be a large freight.
Yeah, it'll be oversized too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's nice for people who don't have to bike up the garage shell on the way out.
Yeah, I mean, overall, as the other commissioners have pointed out, pretty positive reviews of this project. I mean, my only complaint, and it was listed in the staff report as well, that a lot of the feedback was that this should be bigger, there should be more units. this should be a taller building. Clearly, you put a lot of thought into this project, and at times to the point that it honestly looks a little ridiculous, like catering to one single house that's in a major urban corridor. When you have buildings that are 110 feet next to it, 96 feet across the street. So, the building was kind of forced to cater to this one house instead of the house catering to the condition of this multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project, the metro. But I understand that's the context we operate in here in Arlington. So that could have been a lot more units instead of a 60-foot setback. But overall, very good. I'm looking forward to the protected bike lane, and I'd like to reiterate what Vice Chair Furman and the other commissioners have said, that needs to be hardened. So it's not, because that whole strip is kind of a mess with Ubers, and occasionally cyclists have to be allowed to the road to get around a car. So I think that'll be a big improvement, and definitely an improvement over a pretty much vacant office building. So with that, I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. We can, Commissioner Mendes.
I'd like to quickly echo the emphasis on protecting the bike lane from double parking, especially as we kind of get to the sort of tail ends of the parking lane on here where there is no parking spaces between the bike lane and the travel lanes. Having a more non-flexible barrier there might be good to prevent the double parkers who will otherwise try to use that. So, but that's been it. Really excited for the potential of the project. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the corridor down, what is that, on southeast in front of Amazon? That's kind of the gold standard, and for the protected bike lane. And I think Wilson Boulevard is an important thoroughfare that is worthy of infrastructure like that. It's one of our main strips. So,
Yeah, like it exists now between Roslyn and that's a really good protected bike, truly protected bike.
There's a block of it also between Clarendon and Courthouse. So I think as development is happening, it's happening along Wilson, and Fairfax or the other street that's adjacent there. But yeah, it's good to see it advancing here as well.
Thing is, yeah, sadly that block now suffers from a lot of the double parking issues. Like it is like one of the worst segments I've seen in this area. So yeah, but just hope to prevent that in the future.
and also giving the owner the ability to do with those parking spaces in the garage as they please. I think that's good. It's something we should be doing more in the county. We were discussing the Arlington transportation future. I really hope that one of the things in that future is the abolishment of parking minimums, and letting people that are investing tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, decide how much parking they need, instead of some arbitrary numbers from the 1950s before the metro even existed. So thank you for giving people the freedom to do with their property what they see as being.
Remember our big discussions on daycare about
Yeah.
parking minimums, and like, why are we telling the daycare providers how much parking they should have?
Yeah.
They'll know it better than we would.
I mean, it's like, I think like 80% of our work here is site plan amendments for parking. Just kind of ridiculous. Staff not placed it on all of that. Beating a dead horse, then we can move on to, unless someone else has anything else that we can move on to the action item voting. Let's see, I don't know, Commissioner Lane, tell me, since you're also on the planning commission, only the last item looked relevant to transportation commission as a vote. So
That's right.
I think, I don't think we should be voting on heights in the transportation commission. So unless anyone objects, I would only vote on the last item. We can feel free to have a discussion about it if. It would be the site plan amendment. Where is this thing? Could we get that pulled up on the big screen, please?
I don't think so.
Can Joanne show her screen motion?
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what I'm gonna try.
I think we have it here.
Okay,
Yeah.
here's the site plan one.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I move to adopt the following resolution to recommend that the county board to adopt the attached ordinance SPLN 24-00003, construct up to 309 residential units with ground for commercial use with modifications to permit less than 60% commercial use for additional density, reduced residential parking ratio, one-way drive aisle width, required loading spaces, location of loading, density exclusions, retail clear height, distance between building entrances, total streetscape width on Wilson Boulevard, and other modifications necessary to achieve the proposed development plan located at 3033 Wilson Boulevard, 1209 North Highland Street, and 1418 North Garfield Street. RPC number 15-067-002-006-007-033-036, subject to the conditions of the attached ordinance. Right then, any
Second.
yeah. All right, so we're gonna start voting from down there. Commissioner Mendelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Forrest.
Aye.
Vice Chair Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Singh.
Aye.
Commissioner Leetomi.
Aye.
Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we tack up and leave, do we have any other business we need to discuss?
Yeah, that's the ours to guess. Yeah.
That's kind of a follow-up. Oh, wait. It's kind of a follow-up from last time when we talked about Better Bus. The schedules are now technically released, but you have to comb through their trip planner and set the individual time you want to go to actually see when the thing leaves. But the point is that they're out and you can plan your own personal trips right now and see how they look. So have fun and hopefully be happy and not sad.
Oh, Sunday, yes, Sunday where I took the 55 today, and the bus stops, that's where the 3Y is just being discontinued.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And the sign now says this bus stop's being eliminated.
Oh, no.
Right. All of the signs say this bus stop is being eliminated.
It's a generic sign. I took a picture of it yesterday when I was on Langston Boulevard. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, 55 is not going away.
It's not clear that it's
Just
being eliminated versus stop consolidation.
Right.
That's like
Don't
a
say the
differentiation.
3Y's being eliminated.
It's a generic sign that they posted on all the stops. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you specifically.
That's crazy because the
What
ones
it
in
says.
Crystal City on Eats don't say that. They say like,
Okay,
has the state
it actually says Metro Bus will no longer stop here. I don't know if that's what it says. But if you're reading the sign, sometimes people will just assume no buses will stop there.
Well,
You're not
yeah.
really paying attention, yeah.
Oh my God.
So I noted it yesterday when I was out
Okay,
here.
thank you, very good. We think the same way.
I'm actually on their riding advisory council now, so I will bring that up when we see
It
them.
ended up going back to that, but I mean, we were able to just send the presentation through email and watched it that way.
Do you have an update?
I don't know, it was some kind of Wi-Fi
Any
connection.
comments?
I can talk here.
It's just happy to be here.
Participate.
Are you? Have you all seen I'll wait till the team meeting.
Oh, okay. Are we adjourned?
Yeah, we're adjourned.
Yes.
We're being held hostage.
Wrap this stuff up. Okay.
Right.
All right, whatever. Have y'all seen the new DeVita signs done by Arlington AF?
Oh, I saw the picture of those online. They're great.